Welcome to our Friday live stream. This week in cannabis news, powered by Dutchie. Each Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we deliver an overview of this week's cannabis news. It's quick, it's comprehensive, and it sends you into the weekend as a more informed cannabis professional. And it's all made possible by our friends at Dutchie. If you haven't already, you must check out their Summer 25 release. I've put a note in the show notes about how to find that release. And stick around to the end of the program for a conversation with Judson Hill, the president of Fine Federal, Georgia, one of the very few medical cannabis operators in that very large state. So hold tight for that. Now, let's get to it. We all know the story by now. 2 weeks ago, the New York's Office of Cannabis Management threw a wrench in the state's cannabis market when it told over 100 dispensaries, many of which are already operating, that their locations aren't compliant, despite those locations having already been approved. This week, we learned a legislative fix may be coming. A bill filed by State Senator Luis Sepulveda would grandfather in cannabis dispensaries licensed before July 28, 2025, even if they're within 500 feet of a school. These dispensaries would be able to renew their licenses if they're in good standing once the 2-year term expires. It's essentially a push to grandfather those cannabis shops who had their locations already approved. More on this in the show notes. And on this front, on Tuesday's Cultivated Live, Jeremy and I spoke with New York Times reporter Ashley Southall about this ongoing crisis in New York. We also discussed Ashley's recent story where she spoke with dispensary operators who will be forced to find new locations, some of whom are still paying rent on stores that aren't actually open yet. Here's what she said. The OCM likes to use the metaphor that they were building the plane as they were flying it. There's a lot of uncertainty, and this was a fresh injection of that. The two largest companies competing for state seed-to-sale tracking services have joined forces. In recent years, BioTrack has expanded its POS and commercial side services. Now, the company is spinning off its tracking services into BT Government, which will continue serving the states with BioTrack contracts like New York. Metric and BioTrack Government will work together on their respective government clients. New York delayed its August 1st BioTrack implementation deadline on this news. As you may have heard about the special legislative session that the Texas legislature is having right now. One of the key things that was meant to be covered in the special session was a possible hemp ban, which the governor vetoed earlier this year. While most of the news from Texas has been about redistricting, the state Senate there once again voted last week to ban intoxicating hemp products. Thus far, the bill appears close to identical to the bill that banned hemp earlier in the session that the legislature passed and that the Governor Abbott, vetoed. Now, the ball is in the state house's court. Glass House Brands provided an update about the ICE raid it endured back in July. The company said that they have only been able to identify 9 of their employees who were arrested or detained. The company also said that 11 minors were detained in the raid, but that they weren't employees. That estimate excludes third-party farm labor contractors such as Jamie Alanis Garcia, who passed away after falling off a roof during the raid. The company said that it has since terminated its deal with 2 labor contractors, and it has signed new labor peace agreements with the Teamsters. To Delaware, where Delaware's adult use cannabis market went live on the 1st, and the state estimates that about $625,000 in sales were made during the first 3 days of legal cannabis in Delaware. Each week, we bring you insights from our official insights partner at Lit Alerts. And this week, Ohio celebrated its 1-year anniversary of cannabis sales. And Lit Alerts are back with another edition of their Challenger brand series. These, of course, are brands that are moving up the charts and nipping at the heels of the top 10. Ohio-born brands like Fireland Scientific, Butterfly Effect, Buckeye Relief, and Pure Ohio continue to expand in every category, dominating not only the top 10, but the Challenger brands as well. As Ohio enters its 2nd year of adult use cannabis sales, look for these brands to crack the top 10 in their respective categories and beyond. One fun thing, although it is kind of crazy that it happened this week, cannabis beverage company Drippy issued a press release and created an ad that claimed the company was partnering with Virgin Airways to allow passengers to purchase THC-infused beverages in flight. But it's all fake. When Marijuana Moment reached out to Virgin, the company said they had no knowledge of the partnership. Seems like a risky strategy to us, but here is the ad that Drippy put out.
Most airlines focus on getting you there. We focus on how it feels along the way. That's why we're proud to be the first to serve a different kind of beverage.
Can I offer you a drink?
I'll take a Drippy.
Bold flavor, chill effect, no hangover. Welcome to high altitude hospitality.
Virgin Airlines now has its own Mile High Club, Drippy, the first ever infused soda served in the skies. Because in-flight service shouldn't just keep you comfortable, it should elevate you beyond 30,000 feet. This isn't just flying, it's floating.
Now serving Drippy on all Virgin domestic flights. Sip till ya drip.
That was actually a thing Drippy did. It's on YouTube right now if you want to find it. We can only imagine letters being drafted by the corporate counsel at Virgin Airways right now. Good luck with that, Drippy. And that's it for the news part of This Week in Cannabis News. But before we go, I wanted to share a conversation I had this week with Judson Hill, the president of Fine Federal, Georgia. While it's not a state we talk about a lot here on the show, it is a big state with loads of room for growth given the right regulatory landscape. Fine Federal, Georgia is one of the very few operators in this unique market. I asked Judson about the medical cannabis program in Georgia, about their operations, as well as the very real presence of hemp-derived products people are consuming, and in loads in Georgia. So here's my conversation with Judson Hill, president of Fine Federal, Georgia. Judson, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad we could. And for those that don't know, I went to Emory in Atlanta. I know that is a surprise to many people because the reaction I get most is like, "Oh, that's a really good school." And I think they say it like, "How did you end up there?" That's the way I read it when they act surprised. But before we sort of dive into,
welcome to Atlanta virtually.
Thank you. That's as far as they let me go.
Yeah.
Now,
I heard you're not allowed back.
They have not allowed me back, and they do allow me back. I presume I haven't been back. But I am also curious as to what is happening. Certainly there was a cannabis culture at Emory, of which I was probably part of. But what is the status now of Georgia? How challenging or easy it is for medical patients in this case to get cannabis? Give us a little bit of background overview of what's happening in Georgia, and then also a bit of sort of the footprint of Fine Federal in the state.
Yeah, for sure. And appreciate you having me. I'm born and raised in Atlanta, so like you at Emory, I mean, cannabis has been around here for a while, and I mean, I think really embedded into the culture. I mean, Georgia's a state of 11 million people, so from an opportunity, I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, left in the industry of just sheer size and the depth of kind of the cannabis and the entertainment, and Atlanta really becoming a hub of the Southeast. The medical program actually launched 10 years ago, so it was somewhat progressive at the time, but it's been a slow rollout, like many states, lawsuits, etc. Finally, 2 years ago, the first dispensary opened. That was True Leave. So there's six licensees. We're all vertically integrated, similar to like Florida was in the early days. I've been in the industry about a decade. Lived out in California for most of the time, worked in a handful of different markets, and I guess personally was biased waiting for the South to turn back on. A side note or random connection that I never thought was relevant to my cannabis career, but my dad was a longtime state senator here in Georgia, so I was kind of following what was happening legally while I was living out in LA, and these licenses were awarded 4 years ago. Every MSO and person in the world was trying to get one. Fortunately, Fine Federal won one of the 6 licenses. So it's us. True Leave has one. A company called Botanical Sciences, which is a single state operator here in Georgia. And we're the 3 operational. The other 3 have yet to turn on.
So it's not huge, but the opportunity and market is certainly there in terms of the population. How challenging it is, or is it, for patients to receive a medical card, to find fentanyl? Like, what is that process like for a patient? We know that can have a real big impact on sort of the relative size of the market. We saw in Michigan where it was super easy. We've seen markets where it's super challenging. Like, where does Georgia fall in that sort of array?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because some of parts of it are easy and some parts are difficult, or really where the program is at is difficult to the point where it passed 10 years ago. So at the highest level, it's called a low THC oil program, and we can't sell smokable products, which is an artifact of 10 years ago that we're working to update. And kind of the benefit of, well, I guess there's no benefit at this point in time, but programs have turned on even in Mississippi and Arkansas and states like that that are smaller and more conservative or southern than Georgia. But since they came out over the past couple of years, have been more advanced in what they offer. Georgia only has about 33,000 patients in the program, which is very small comparatively to those other states from a ratio perspective. And I'd say the main reason is because we aren't able to offer the two largest product categories, being flower or vape. And then we have the other interesting thing that you and I were kind of talking about before we got started, of over those past 6 or so years that the program's been rolling out, you've had all of these hemp products that have all of a sudden become abundantly available. I mean, especially in the South. So it's really been more of a, what's the incentive to go and get involved in the program when there's other alternatives. But I guess to answer your basic question, telemedicine is available, and pain and PTSD are the two largest conditions in terms of number of patients. So it's not extremely difficult to get a card if you have one of the conditions.
It's not extremely difficult. It still is relatively small relative to the size of the state. The products available are are limited. Certainly the two biggest categories not available. And I guess sort of thinking about it from that perspective, and having experience and sort of familial experience, what's happening at the state legislature, like, is there a push? Obviously there's a push, but like, what are the prospects of more of a full-blown market, certainly medical, to add flower, to add vapes? Like, is there a push? Are people receptive? Is there an argument, like, a lot of people are finding products that they like outside of this channel and the hemp channel? Like, what is the conversation like among sort of leaders in Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, that's really been a big focus since I just moved back last year. We have 3 stores open, and we opened them all last year, and really operationalizing the business. And then, to your point, working to change the laws has been the priority. At the highest level, I mean, we just wanted to change the name of the program from, low THC oil is either the least sexy and appealing name possible, or just flat out confusing. People are like, what is a low THC oil?
Right.
So call it Georgia Medical Cannabis Program. And then to remove the 5% THC oil element, because until you get rid of that, you can't sell flower or vape, clearly. And then add flower and vape as form factors. Those are really the 3 priorities. And we did have a couple bills moving last year. And I guess in terms of the receptivity, like, they each passed their respective house of the legislature with overwhelming support. But then it's kind of funny how politics works. At the final hours, they seem to vanish, and they were never called up for a final vote. And the session ends here in Georgia in April. So long way of saying they didn't die. They'll come back next year, but clearly there's some people that don't want it to happen, even if the majority is pretty much on board at this point.
Yeah. And so it's some of those things we've seen in other markets. I think Minnesota for a long period of time was only an oil market with no flower available. Like, these things you were talking about remnants of the past in markets that have become more broad or larger, certainly. And I want to talk a bit about sort of the hemp cannabis component that you mentioned. As I was telling you before we came on, I was in Tennessee last weekend, and it seems like hemp derived beverages, edibles, products are almost more readily available in the South than in other places because of this lack of a robust medical program and certainly no adult use programs. And like how to think about that, I guess, from a fine federal perspective, from a business perspective, knowing that also fine federal operates in Massachusetts and Connecticut as well. Like, are we talking like I mean, from your perspective, like a 10-year horizon where it won't matter, or is it like sort of stunting the growth of the medical program in Georgia because there are THC products available in other formats and in other places?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think yes, it clearly has stunted the growth of the market because I think a key difference of all of the southern states and all the states in general is hemp is legal federally, but then some states have done nothing about it, like the Carolinas or Texas until currently this session. It's been a hot button issue, but there's states where it's gone totally unregulated. Clearly, that's not the answer. And people are selling THCA, P, XYZ, or me coming from California. What I know is just California cannabis sold out the back door. That needs to be curtailed. And then some states in the South have done so. So like Georgia just put hemp regulations in last year. You mentioned Tennessee. I know they've put in some regulations in. So I guess it seems like the states are working to address it. But yeah, when the program was rolling out over the last 6 years since 2018, when the Farm Bill happened, THCA has been available in Georgia until last year. And so it's kind of like when you could go get that at a smoke shop, it makes it hard to incentivize people to go get a medical cannabis card versus, let's say, Florida being a similar market to Georgia. It started as a low THC oil about the same time, but then much more quickly advanced to offer edibles and then vapes and flower, and kind of that early wave of cannabis states. I think dispensaries were frankly much more novel, and you couldn't get all this hip stuff online and wherever else.
Right.
So yeah, it's a new age of like there's a lot of options of where to get your cannabis.
It is, and that sort of new age of where you can buy THC, let's say, outside of the medical program, makes it seem even more antiquated. Sort of the medical program, certainly a low THC oil medical program, like it seems ripe for disruption, and I'm sure that's part of the sort of corporate thinking. But I wonder, I wonder what you hear from patients, because they must be asking for these things that they can't get through the program. And is that part of sort of the advocacy effort that this actually would really help patients if they could get higher doses, smokable flower, vapes, all those things? Like I imagine that's part of the advocacy effort to say, look, let's at least serve the patients that we want in the program.
100%. I mean, to your point, it's really consumer and patient safety. I mean, I think a key differentiator with us, like I said, we're vertically integrated. So all of our flower is grown in Georgia, processed into oil in our same facility, made into a product, and then sold directly to our dispensary, where the hemp supply chain is all over the board. And it's really on the consumer to know, I mean, there's some big MSOs and brands doing hemp products, and I would assume they're probably doing it the right way. But then you also have these kind of little moonshiner brands. And if you're not in the industry or doing your research, you don't know the difference. You just go into a store and see that. So I think the safety is a key element. And then, I mean, we really work with like doctors. So, I mean, our patients come from, partnerships we have with cancer doctors and veterans with PTSD. So it is really, meaningful work and helpful to have that relationship where there's a provider and there's guidance from a medical point of view. I think the key difference for us.
I wonder when you're in other sort of fine federal internal meetings, when people talk about what's happening in, let's say Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then Georgia, sort of in that order of, I would say, most robust markets, even though Connecticut is almost there. It's just so new. I'm sure some of the challenges you have with the business in Georgia are different and apart from they're having in Massachusetts and Connecticut. It's like, it sort of shines a light on how interesting and unique the cannabis industry is, that the regulations can be so different from each and every market that it's like you're operating in space compared to them. And then
Yeah.
MTU.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I guess coming from, again, starting in California back in the medical market, I feel like I'm kind of coming from the future or the past or however you want to look at it. Um, so yeah, like you said, in Massachusetts, I mean, I think it's really somewhat similar to what California is getting to in terms of it's oversaturated and things are starting, certain companies are going out of business. It's really how you can be competitive, race to the bottom, things like that. Connecticut, to your point, is not there yet. And I mean, that's where Fine Fettl's based. We have about 25% of the retail market share and have really been a retailer to date. So there, our focus has been more, we just turned on a cultivation and are launching in-house brands and kind of how can we scale up vertically and, expand the brand that way by offering wholesale. And then to your point, I'm over here talking about, is cannabis safe? Yes or no? Does this program exist? Yes or no?
Right.
But then also really competing at the most with the hemp products, where I think in these states like in the Northeast or California, where they full out banned hemp beverages, you don't have as much competition from those products. And I think there's a balance. Like hemp beverages, personally, I don't drink alcohol. I like cannabis. I think they're great. And I think it's a great way to open up to more potential cannabis consumers, because all of us in the industry may feel otherwise, but there's a whole world of people out there that would never go to a dispensary.
Right.
So by putting it in, a bar or a restaurant, like you said, in Nashville, I think that opens up a whole new world of consumers that may say, hey, I like this. And then I may want to come to Fine Fettle and check out what they have there.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just a flat negative, but when you're offering, essentially the same products, or you're offering flower in a state that we can't even sell flower in our dispensaries, then you have a total imbalance.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on today to sort of give us a view of what's happening in Georgia, what's happening with Fine Fettle, and really sort of the hemp conversation that's happening there as well. Because I think as you mentioned when you reached out by email, it's a market that we don't talk about a lot, but it is certainly one with one of the biggest upsides that we haven't talked about, and I think that's really important. And we'll have you on again to sort of talk about updates and insight to what's happening in Georgia. So I appreciate the time, to a state that's near and dear to my heart. So Judson, I appreciate the time today, and we'll definitely connect with you as time goes on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. And next time you come down to visit Emory, let me know.
Oh, I will. Well, I have a daughter in grade 10, so maybe the grade 11 college tours will be on through. I appreciate it.
Maybe she'll be smart enough to follow in your footsteps.
She's much smarter than me. I don't know if she wants to go. We live in Canada now. I don't know if we can pony up for what it would cost to send her to school in the States. Certainly not for 4 years, but we'll see. And if it coincides with sort of some cannabis business, it may make it a lot easier. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, if you visit, you can. Would love to have you check out our dispensaries here.
Amazing. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Judson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Judson. Thank you all for joining us here today. Thank you to Lit Alerts for your partnership and exclusive insights into the Ohio market this week. Thank you, Dutchie, for making those shows possible each and every week. Find how to find them in the show notes. You can find all of these stories and much, much more at cultivated.news. We'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn, find us on YouTube, subscribe to us there, and stay connected on socials. But most importantly, get our newsletter in your inbox every single day. Check back next Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here for This Week in Cannabis News, powered by Dutchie. Have a good and safe weekend, everybody.